it's Caroline from Personal Empowerment Academy, and I hope you're having an awesome day. So today I want to talk to you about how to overcome financial trauma. Now, if you saw my previous video, I explained what financial trauma is and how if you've been suffering or experiencing a particular recurring money pattern for a while, just got a visitor here saying hello. All right, down you go. So if you've been experiencing a particular money pattern for a while, then it could be because you've gone through some kind of financial trauma where ever since a particular traumatic event, your money might not have been the same, or you might be struggling with a particular issue like not being able to save or being in debt or not being able to hit your income goals. So what I want to explain today is how you can actually start to overcome that trauma if that's happened to you. And if you want more information about the details around financial trauma, you can catch my previous video. Okay, sorry, I'm just a bit distracted. I have a growling dog in the background. Daisy, stop it. Shh. Okay, all right, let's try that again. So, okay, there's 3 key steps to overcoming financial trauma. So the first step is that you actually want to neutralize the negative emotions associated with the trauma. So I mentioned in my last video that there are 2 types of financial trauma. So the first of these is loss-based financial trauma. So this is a trauma that is surrounded by feelings of really sadness and unfairness. So the whole situation might feel like it was really unfair to you. So even though the particular event that caused the financial trauma might have happened a long time ago, it's actually the strong feelings of the sadness and the unfairness that keep your finances stuck the way they are today. And the reason this happens is because you haven't been able to let go of those feelings that are still within you from that past event. And so as a result, what this means is that you're not actually putting all of your energy and your brilliance and your great ideas and your problem-solving capability into solving whatever the issue is around your finances, because you may keep dwelling on the sadness and the unfairness from the past, or even if you're not consciously aware that you're doing this, what happens is that every time you go to try to interact with money or to fix the problem, then you get reminded, you get triggered, you get flooded with these feelings of sadness and unfairness. And so what happens is, naturally, no one wants to be surrounded by these kinds of feelings. And as a result of avoiding the feelings of sadness and unfairness, you end up actually avoiding dealing with the money situation altogether. And so it kind of just sits there, and it's really this negative cycle of emotions that makes it impossible for you to have a great relationship with money. And so the first thing that you want to do is to neutralize that feeling of sadness or unfairness around whatever loss you experienced. And you can use a clearing tool like tapping to do this. So what you want to do is really get to the heart of what you're feeling. And so if it is loss that really resonates with you, then you can just say words that describe that loss. So you can just tap on the various points and say something like, I lost so much. I lost so much from this experience. I lost everything. I feel so alone in what I've experienced and nobody understands. I lost so much that day, and I lost so much more than money. And so you can continue tapping around like that. And as you go through, if you are feeling like you lost so much more than money, then try to get to the core of what it is that you lost. Maybe you lost your confidence. Maybe your self-esteem took a hit. Maybe you even just feel like you lost yourself in that moment and you just haven't been able to recover properly since. So what you want to do is use a tool like tapping, because that's just going to help to settle the energy that's running live through your nervous system that keeps you stuck in that situation. So before I get on to the second strategy that you can use to overcome the trauma, let's touch on anger-based financial trauma, because we will use tapping to clear away that energy again, but it's just the focus of it is slightly different, because anger is such a strongly fueled emotion that you want to deal with it in the right way. And so the thing is, when you have a financial trauma that you're still angry about, whether that's anger directed at yourself or anger directed at others, then what happens is anger becomes the primary emotion that surfaces when you're dealing with money. So you might find yourself in a really tense and angry state when you're dealing with a transaction that, has nothing to do with that past event, but that's what surfaces out of your nervous system. And, the interesting thing with anger is that, especially if it's anger at yourself, you can feel really justified in that anger because of the strong emotional attachment to that past event. And so you kind of get caught up in this vicious cycle because that anger keeps you stuck there. You feel justified, and so you get even more angry and you feel like you're really entitled to be that angry. And the downside of being in that negative spiral is that you really just don't trust yourself because you're feeling angry, but you feel like you're entitled to feel angry. And so it just causes this sort of cycle of darkness where you're just not able to break out of it because you're actually angry at yourself. And so what happens is when you're in that state, so when you're holding on to such intense negative emotions, your ability to thrive financially and to tap into your best source of creativity really gets compromised because you're just caught up in a negative spiral. And you may not even realize that it is this past event that's triggering that. It's just that every time you go to deal with certain financial transactions or situations, you start to feel all tense and negative. And so that's largely due to a financial trauma from the past. And so again, to neutralize that anger, you can use tapping as an effective clearing tool. And so the words that you would express would be quite different to the loss-based trauma. What you would want to focus on if it is anger at yourself is the mistakes that you feel that you made. So your tapping might go something like this. There I was, making so many mistakes and doing everything wrong. I'm an idiot and I should have known better. I should have done much better in that situation. I was too trusting and I was too naive. I was weak. And that is totally unforgivable. And what you want to do is just say the words that express how you really feel. So if you're angry at yourself, then what is it that, that makes you lash out about? And they're the words that you want to get out. And so even though you're expressing very negative statements, so beliefs that you have about yourself and negative emotions, by doing the tapping, you're actually neutralizing the energy in your nervous system. So it's a very safe way to be able to express these negative emotions without compounding the negativity any further. It's actually a good way to release it and to neutralize it, and to really deactivate that stress response that you react with every time you go to interact with money. And so that's step one. Step one is really around the neutralizing, and you can use tapping to do that. So then step two, and actually, sorry, I should mention that if you are dealing with an anger-based financial trauma, then you'll find that once you effectively deal with the anger and you neutralize it, then what you'll suddenly get faced with is those feelings of loss. And when you do get to that point, then you want to go back and do the loss tapping that I did at the start of this video. So if you are doing anger, then you will be hit with both of those rounds. So you'll need to clear both of those. So once you've done that, then the second step is to actually make some way in your life for compassion and forgiveness. Especially if you have been angry at yourself, then once you've let go of the intensity of the emotions, then you actually want to release that anger that you have towards yourself. And if there's anger towards others, then you'll want to release that too. And to move on, you're really going to have to forgive yourself and forgive any other people who were involved in the situation. So one way that you can do this is to utilize compassion. So understand that you were probably doing your best at the time. So, it's easy to look back now and judge an old situation where you might have stuffed up and made a huge mistake and lost a lot of money. But at the time, to the best of your knowledge and ability and with whatever resources you had available to you, you were actually doing your very best. So, have a bit of compassion for yourself. And another way to approach this is to look at it and say, okay, well, if it wasn't you, if that was somebody else, so imagine your younger self as another person, how would you coach that person? Would you berate them today and put them down and have a go at them? Or would you actually say, you know, it's done, it's in the past, you did your best, and let's look at what we can do to move on. So just try to have that compassion. Like sometimes it's really hard to shut off our own inner critic, but try to imagine that it's someone else and see whether you would exert the same level of judgment and criticism on that person. So that's step 2. That's all about having the compassion and being able to forgive yourself for the situation. So then step 3, once you've cleared away a lot of that negativity, is where we can start to get productive. And so step 3 is really about learning from the experience and then taking empowered and productive action. So, when you're able to detach from the negative emotions of a financial trauma, you're then able to look back on the situation and actually see what you learned from it. So in most cases, what you'll find is you're actually so much wiser and smarter now, and you're more equipped to deal with similar types of situations. So it could be that, as a result, you've stepped up your responsibility and you're better able to take ownership of financial situations now. Maybe you've learned how to track finances that you didn't know how to do that before. And it may be as well that when you now get involved in transactions, so if it was around business loss or about investment, maybe you now have a better grasp on what some of the warning signs are, and you're better able to assess a financial situation and maybe react much more quickly than you were able to do way back then. So when you're able to look at a situation objectively that was once very raw and used to hurt you, then you're actually able to see the gifts in that situation. And when you can see the gifts in the situation, then you can action, because you're now able to learn from the experience and operate from a much wiser and empowered state. So just to summarize, so the 3 key steps to overcoming a financial trauma. The first one is to neutralize the intense negative emotions, and you can do that with tapping. The second one is to make way for compassion and forgiveness in your life. And then the third and final step is to learn from the experience, see the gifts from what happened, and take empowered action so that you can move forward and create a much better financial situation for yourself. So I hope you found that helpful. If you've got any experiences that you want to share, drop me a comment below and let me know maybe what you've learned from some of your past financial trauma. So I'd love to hear from you, and if it's something you want to discuss in private as well, then feel free to drop me a personal message and I will get back to you and we can talk about your situation and how you can bounce back from that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.